The Social Media Union Podcast.
Hi, welcome to the next episode of the Social Media Union podcast. I really hope by now, while you're listening to the introductory jingle, that has really stuck in your head. Just to explain to Sam, our guest, we have a new jingle on the podcast, and it really just stays with you. Let's put it that way. I actually do think, and I probably shouldn't say this out loud, that it sounds a little bit like 80s porn, this jingle.
Okay, well now I'm really excited.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna have to play it back for you. Yeah, it's come back, and I actually kind of love it. It's super kitsch, and we were gonna change it up, and I was like, sod it.
Don't change that.
It makes me laugh every single time I hear it, and it really is like the words stay in your head, like there's like a beat. Anyway, so we have Sam with us today, and as always, I'm going to let him introduce himself because he'll do a better job than me. So over to you, Sam.
Yeah, hey, thanks so much, Jenna. It's lovely to be here. I'm Sam. I'm a coach, I guess a business coach, technically, if I had to put a word in front of it. But my purpose is to help people live and work joyfully. That's really what I'm about. I worked in ad agencies for about 10 years. Jenna and I worked together many, many years ago now. My first agency. And I worked at Adam and Eve, DDB. I worked at Mother. I worked at Havas, as well as Kindred, where we started. But I'm a coach. I help people to achieve things they didn't think were possible. I help them to redefine how they see and how they experience the world. There's many different definitions for what I do. But really, more than anything, I sit with people and I just change their very perception of who they are and the world around them so they can achieve something just different and incredible and loving and wonderful in their lives.
And I think to any of our listeners, obviously all of us being in social media, we probably need an enormous amount of that. Working in social media is I have never really worked in anything else, but it's a particularly unique experience as far as I know in terms of stress levels and often forgetting that there is joy in our jobs. So without further ado, let's move on to questions. So basically anyone, as I said, like anyone working in social media totally knows what it means to be busy. It often feels like we're kind of just firefighting, chasing our tails, and don't really have enough time to kind of sit back and really kind of think about what we're really doing on a day-to-day basis. So what I'd really like to know from you is kind of how we can tweak our everyday chaotic work commitments and schedules to bring more joy and balance into our working lives. Just a small question to start.
Yeah. Well, the workshop and talk I most frequently do when I go into a company is called Busy Isn't Working. We've developed a way of working, a kind of business, I guess, model or framework of how we experience our lives that is essentially based on busyness. Busyness is a way of experiencing the world. It's a value set, but it's around the principle that more is better. That's essentially how busyness kind of manifests. So on a personal level, it makes each one and every one of us think that our life is going really well if we've got plans in the diary every night and we've got 3 parties to go to on Saturday night, God forbid. But like our experience, our experience of time and what we do is based on the principle that more is better. And so when you look at work, it changes how you perceive what you're doing. So social media in particular is based on reacting to things that kind of occur, and it's based on a kind of scale and wealth of things that you need to put out in the world. So your default is already going to be that quantity is somehow better because the dynamics of how social media platforms work is that that's the case. So you're already kind of in the fire. And then you add on all the societal pressures around doing more, meaning that your life is more worthy and that you are a better person and you're more successful in and you've got a kind of perfect storm. The step out of busy is essentially to work out something that's more important than it. If this kind of quantity is the current value set, then immediately our opportunity is to kind of veer towards quality. And that is not just the quality of the work you're doing, but actually quality of experience of life. And so the goal here is really to find something that's really important to you. And in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, they kind of talk, Stephen Covey talks about beginning with the end in mind. And what he means is like, what's valuable to you? What really matters? And you can do this personally on a personal level. So for me, working with joy is something that matters, and it infuses every part of my business and my working day. But I'm also working with clients who have their own value set. So you may be working with a client who really values customers being happy. That's a value set. The thing is, when you connect to that value set, the way you approach the problems you're looking to overcome in your work is different. Because if your default is more is better, so I will work longer hours, I'll reply to more messages, I'll put out more posts, whatever, then you're just going to pull yourself thin. I describe it as Bilbo in Lord of the Rings when he describes being butter spread over too much bread, a kind of thinness. But if you connect to something more powerful, so say what you want to do is move people in a powerful way, which is actually something a client said to me the other day. If you want to move people in a powerful way, the way you write, the way you interact with people, the way you engage with the world is different than if it's about quantity. So when I think about working joyfully, there's me enjoying my job, but it's actually bigger than that. It's, if my value set is to work joyfully, it's up to me to find joy in every aspect of my life. And that includes like my schedule and how I work. And so this morning I had an hour and I thought I should be doing work. I went and played PlayStation because there was a game I really wanted to play. And my entire nervous system was screaming that I should have been going to do some work. Like it was literally a flame. But I asked the question, like, what would I love? What would bring me joy? And the answer was to go play like an hour of PlayStation before my first call. And so my entire decision-making criteria is different. So to evolve beyond busyness, beyond quantity, beyond this kind of fear of missing out that kind of infuses everything, ask yourself, what truly is important to me? Like, what does my heart say? Like, what is my calling? And then use that to go work out, well, what am I doing? Like, what really am I doing? What is actually my job? Because when you use that value, your job looks really different. And you realize that your job is not just replying to stuff. That's too small. But if that is the current value set, yeah, you're going to be there all day. You're going to be there all night, and you're going to be checking your phone like 8,000 times a day. But when you feel into that answer of what really matters to me, what do I love? What's my heart calling me to do? The answer is so different, and what to do becomes really obvious. It's like, if I'm about joy, I work with people I love. I work with a schedule that works for me and brings loads of joy into my life. I spend loads of time with my wife. I go for long walks and I listen to great music and I play my guitar and I paint my hobbies. And it's like, well, that's all my working day. How could I reduce it down to just being sat at a laptop? But the biggest thing for that is we try and think into the answer to it. And my suggestion is to feel into it, like genuinely feel, ask yourself and feel, what makes me happy? What makes me joyful? And the answer is always really obvious. And then act from there.
Oh my God. So, okay. Thank you so much for that. That is so, I can't really stress how important that is, and how, and from my own side of things, like when I first started Gumption, for me, it was a point of pride that I didn't have a day off for 4 years. So I would go on holiday, but I would still be working. Christmas Day, I was still working. At New Year's Day, still working. Birthday, still working. And I was like, so I come out of that London environment and working in agencies where it was like, oh my God, I was the last one to leave the office last night, like super proud of that. And I was so proud that I, in a way, in a really messed up way of like not having this day off, because look how hard I've worked. And now I'm really embarrassed by it. And yeah, I was 26 when I started the business. So I was, you know, we do daft things in our 20s, as we should do. But I do think back on it now with that kind of just like, oh my God, I'm so mortified by the fact that I put my body through that. And to be like completely upfront, it ended up in basically a complete breakdown. Like I had like 7 panic attacks a day for about a week solidly, and just thought I was dying. And that's because I just pushed myself way too hard. I was completely exhausted because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. And I'm so glad there's people like yourself that are really pushing that messaging out there about like work should be joy. And I made huge changes after that happened to me. And now I have so much pride in that I never work past 5 o'clock. I never. I very rarely get into the office before 10 a.m. And because I am not a morning person, so I am better working in the afternoon and I'm really, really productive. But there's no point in me being here like from 8 o'clock. It's just totally pointless. So I'd rather like take my dog for a walk and be in the sunshine and be listening to a podcast. So you're so right. And so much of what I do in my own life now, and it has been really hard, but just going like, well, what brings me joy? And that's a huge part of starting SNU. I was like, I feel like this is something that will bring me joy, to bring like a community together. So yes, like preach.
Yeah,
Totally
100%. And I know every time I shorten my working schedule, which has got shorter and shorter, I'm a coach, it's great and it works really well for me. But every time it's got shorter, my business has grown.
Yeah.
And it's because my particularly we have a society that looks very much at what we do as what's important. And I come from a different school, which is much more influenced by Eastern philosophy, which is who you are being is what is important. So when someone engages me, a coach, they're soaking up every fiber and every aspect of me. They get an experience of who I am and how I act in the world. And so much of this is on like a microscopic level because we have mirror neurons and we're able to analyze how people are being in the world. So, I mean, part of it's a business thing. No one wants a coach who works like 15 hours a day. That means that guy's not doing so much right. But
you got to be living it as well,
yeah,
right?
I've got to be living. I've got to be living as joy. But the same is true for all of us, really. I have a theory that after the Great Recession, like when we were, we were starting our careers,
my God,
challenging time to start a career.
Yeah.
I have a theory that loads of people had to be made redundant. And how do you make redundancies at scale? Easiest thing to do is just keep the people who work the longest because it looks like they're working the hardest. And so I think a business culture was fostered where length of time was a virtue. But it's so limiting and self-defeating to destroy yourself because ultimately you are the product, you with all your creative functions. And when you're afraid and when you're stressed and when you're scared, the parts of the brain that deal with creativity, with empathy, with creative thought, with being able to learn things literally shut down. It's biology. They literally shut down. So being stressed, being afraid, being anxious is the worst possible conditions for work. And it's how most people spend most of their time. And so how I ended up being a coach was I burnt out in advertising, working ridiculous hours. I became very interested in what was happening to me. And I reconnected to some CBT fight or flight stuff I'd learned like 5 or 6 years before. And I asked the question, if I'm this stressed and I'm this anxious, then I have to ask the question, what am I so afraid of? And what about work is making me so afraid? And this is when I realized that I had no value set for what success was. I had no idea of what made me, Sam Pearce, 27 or whatever I was, a valid, good person. And part of this is exacerbated by all the old things that used to determine value, getting a house, buying a car, all of that's been pulled further away. So you tend to be in your 20s going, how do I know I'm doing well? Like, how do I know? And the easiest thing to do is to go for, and this is, there's a guy called Cal Newport who came up with this way of looking at it. When you're not sure what to do, you look for something to measure yourself by. And we live in a world that's obsessed with measurement, and social media is an industry that's obsessed with measurement. Now, if you're working and you don't know if you're doing well, what's the easiest thing to measure? It's how long you've spent working. What's the next? If you work in social media, how many posts did I reply to today? How many posts did I put out? So you go for metrics. The problem is the metrics have no inherent value. And so we're measuring, this is how we end up in the more thing. This is how we end up with more being better. It's like, well, we want to value something because I want to measure myself as valuable. How do I value creativity? How do I value love and empathy and connection? No idea. Really expensive. Not going to do that. But I can say I worked 15 hours today and I can pat myself on the back and go, yes, you're doing it. But of course, eventually you end up, well, burning out and having a horrible time and having to rebuild
like a really horrible time. Do not recommend. It was awful. But like, I mean, in a way, it took that for me to make those enormous changes. And for me in my own life now, like obviously it's different I guess because I have my own business and I do to a certain degree kind of like run my own life and I can make my own decisions. But when I first started Gumption, like the whole goal was like, I'm going to build this huge agency. I'm going to sell it for millions. I'm going to like retire by the time I'm 40. Well, I'm 3 years away from 40 now. And my life goal could not be more different. I just want to be happy, which I genuinely feel like I am. And because of the things that I've done, and that's to make sure I have that balance in my life and I do things that bring me joy. But on a kind of more tangible level, it's I want to work 4 days a week. I still haven't figured out what the hell I will do on that, like that one day, but that's a part of me that's got to figure that out and go, okay, well, what, like recently I've taken the drums up again, like I used to play on my team.
Awesome.
And I've taken the drums up, A, because I feel like it's good for anger management, but B, like it was my husband was like, you don't have a hobby, like all you do is work. And I was like, shit, yeah, I don't have a hobby. That's nuts. And I didn't, and like I certainly didn't have anything that was away from a screen. So now, like doing that, I've got this half an hour lesson a week where I'm on a completely different planet. Basically, there's, it's just all about me and the drum kit, and that's it. And I just kind of like literally just smash away at it.
Yeah, and that's amazing.
Get all that anger out.
Firstly, as someone who works 4 days a week and barely that, definitely take it off. You'll find something to fill it with. But this comes into another thing I think about a lot. Like we've all forgotten how to play. We take everything so seriously, so seriously. We work in communications for brands. That's what I did in advertising. How could I take it so seriously? It doesn't mean it's not important, because it was important to me and it was important to my clients, but we take it really seriously. And so I paint Warhammer. I've got like a little painting station next to me, which my coach challenged me to tell everyone, because I was so embarrassed about painting Warhammer. But the reason I did it was to nurture me being able to play again, because the working world had kind of encouraged it out of me. And the one thing I spend a lot of time with my clients on is dissolving work self and home self and just being yourself.
Yes.
But play is how we learn. It's how we create. And we take it all way too seriously. And this again comes into the fear thing. I just every time I come, this is where the joy, my business originally was about working fearlessly. And I realized I wanted to evolve it beyond that. And that's where I reached work joyfully, because not only is it bad for business, it's kind of destroying us. This fear and this anger and this uncertainty is the reason that the world is facing the problems it is. Like I think it was Gandhi said, the violence in the world will stop when there stops being violence in our thinking. And this fear and uncertainty, you can see it manifest in the world. Like when you look at how we treat the planet, when you look at how we treat other people, there's people internally, we're fighting ourselves all the time. You need to be better. You need to be more successful. You need more money. And you can whip yourself with fear. You can do it. You've done it and I've done it. Like you can keep going. Like you need to be better. You need to be bigger. You need to be, but you just run out. And so the way of thinking I have is, what if I nurture in me just the most loving embracing of life and myself and what's here, like, and how do I foster? I do morning declarations and self-forgiveness exercises, which foster this sense that I'm powerful and I'm loved and I have agency in the world. And what if I just let the results come from there? Like one of my declarations is, I am a client magnet. And it's to create the idea in me that clients are everywhere and they're just coming towards me. The more happy and fulfilled and joyful I am, the more I love my wife, the better my business will do. And that's such a different way of coming it from, I must sacrifice my marriage at the altar of my job. It's like, why would I pick? That's insane. So what I'm going to do is foster joy and love inside my heart and my life. And I'm just going to let that shine out. And the results will speak for themselves, because they just do. People want to be around people happy.
You're so right. And this wasn't one of the questions I was going to ask you, so I'm sorry to like spring it on you, but something I'm conscious of is, so a lot of the listeners will be working in agencies in-house where they might not have and probably don't have that much control on their working environment and certainly the hours that they work. So within the confines of working within the agencies like the ones that we've worked with in the past or in-house, what can those people do to end up with the things that we're talking about? Because we have so much control, we work for ourselves. So for those who might not have that.
So yeah, it's an amazing question. And one, obviously, when you run your own business and you say this stuff, people are like, well, it's all right for you. And to a certain extent, it is. Like, I chose to work for myself for this very reason. The simplest answer I can give is work out the power you actually do have. Because powerlessness, what's called the victim mindset, is kind of an avalanche. If you start seeing yourself as not being able to do things because there'll be negative consequences, that just snowballs. And the little pieces of agency you do have to say no to your boss, to decide not to work that evening, to decide not to check your phone, they begin to be pulled away from you and you begin not to see them. So when I'm working with a client and they're like, oh, I don't have a choice, my first question is that true? And the answer is always no. Like, at the end of it is you could quit. And most people are like, well, I can't choose to do that. And it's like, yes, you can. And if you cut yourself off from the idea that you quit, you do make yourself powerless. And it's not to encourage people to quit. It's that you go into a conversation, instead of being like, oh my God, I must do this, or like, or I'm going to fire. And then if I get fired, I'm going to lose my house. I'm not going to have any food to eat. I'm going to be out homeless on the streets. It's like, well, yeah, maybe. I mean, that could happen. But the actual reality is, like, you could just quit. And when you access that power, when you look at what you could do, like most bosses actually, I say this knowing that some people will have them. Most of the people working really long hours are not doing it because their boss told them to. Usually we do it, and this was certainly the case for me, we do it because actually I've decided to do it.
Yeah.
And so we create external pressure, but actually it's living inside our own head. And that's not, by the way, to negate that people can do things that creates that for us. You know, that's really what power abuse is. It's the insidious voice inside someone's head. You don't even have to yell at them. They'll yell at themselves. That's what abuse is. So that's absolutely a reality out there. But this is the paradox. At the same time, the freedom is to step into your power. The freedom is to realize that you do actually have a choice. And so I once made a list of the shoulds that came into my head. I should work longer hours. I got to 150 before I stopped. And I banished the word from my vocabulary. And I just replaced it with, I choose to. And so if I'm going to work late, I'm going to own that. I'm going to say, I chose to work late. If it starts raining outside, I'm like, I chose the rain. I chose to live in Britain. It rains loads. I chose to stay in a job where I was treated like crap. And it's not to negate the realities that also exist, that prices are going up and people want to keep their houses. It's not to negate that. They can live together. That's what a paradox is. But if you replace every, oh, I have to, or I need to, with I choose to, your life will completely and dramatically change. I chose to work late last night, and so I can choose not to tonight. Like, we cut ourselves off from our power, and abusive people in positions of power nurture us cutting ourselves off from our power. And so the answer is always, I choose to. I chose to work like an idiot at Havas for years. I chose to sleep in the office that one time. I chose to work till 2 a.m. Like, I chose that. And I can be like, oh, I had to, but I didn't have to. I just didn't. Like, the consequences would have been shit, but I didn't. So I choose to. I choose to infuse your world with I choose to, and see what choices become available, because there will be some, and you currently won't be taking them because you won't see them.
Oh my God, Sam, honestly. I'm like, been like making mental notes as I go, and I'm like, oh, I think I'm doing so well with this kind of stuff. And there's so much though, like, and like not to keep bringing it back to me, although I do seem to be doing that, like that launching SMU, I'm putting the hours on mental, and it was actually, my husband said it to me a couple of weeks ago. I was like, well, you decided to do this. And I was like, oh yeah. And I feel like using that, like what you're saying, like I am choosing to do this, like it actually kind of feels immediately like there's more freedom to it. Like you're just not going to feel like it's kind of penned in with it. So what advice have you got for those who don't really feel like they have enough hours in the day? And I think what I definitely don't want to ask and like freak anyone out that works in our world is it's not about fitting more in, for sure. It's really just about finding like better ways to work, I guess, like not to be like too kind of jargony, but like a more efficient way of working with the workloads when we just feel like our to-do list is like 5 pages long and we're just completely freaking out. Like any good methods for us to kind of just get through the day?
Yeah, so there's two things that really come to mind for me. One is our relationship to time. So again, busyness is this kind of sensation that there's not enough time and too much to do. And so the idea that there's not enough time has infused our culture. And yet you check on anyone's phone and it says like 6.5 hours of screen time. And it's like, well, everyone's got the same amount of time. They just do. It's how we choose to spend it. It goes back to the choose thing. One of the quickest ways to freak yourself out is to believe there's not enough time. Easily the way to just freak yourself out. And so I come from a different perspective, which is one of my declarations is I am that there is always enough time. There's all the time in the world. And actually, if you believe there's all the time in the world, time does appear because your choices become different. You slow down, your heart stops beating. The idea there's not enough time is so central to our experience of it. So the first thing I would focus on is that you do have enough time to do what matters. You have enough time. And so it can be really useful to be like, if I have all the time in the world, what are the things that I want to fill that time with? So one is a relationship to time thing that can go into quite a deep conversation. The other is around to-do lists and how we do. So I don't have a to-do list. Admittedly, like, again, I'm a coach. I don't have the most things to do. I have a list of things I want to do, but I don't have a to-do list. And there's a really important reason for this, which is a to-do list is a list of things generally that we need to get done. And going back into the fear thing, if we need to get something done, it implies that there's like a negative consequence coming. It's like a sword of Damocles above our heads. It's like, I need to get this. So the question I always ask is like, well, or what? I need to get these things done, or what? And on one hand, it's like, well, I'll be fired. And it's like, well, is that true? Like, is that genuinely true for this thing that's on page 5 of your to-do list? Like, so unimportant that it's on page 5 of your to-do list. Is it true that you're going to be fired of that? The other question that comes, the other answer that often comes up is, or I'm not good enough. And so this relationship to our to-do list is really about, we live in a culture, and this is actually like a religious and mythological thing, which is that we're from a Northern European Protestant country. And so we were brought up, even if you're not religious, we're brought up in a culture that comes from Protestantism, difficult word. And in that is the idea that you are born sinful, and the point of life is to prove to God that you're good enough to get into heaven. Now, while most of us don't kind of subscribe to that Christian faith, that thinking still exists, and it exists everywhere. So you have to prove in an interview that you're good enough to work somewhere, and then you have to prove that you're good enough to have a promotion. You have to prove that you're good enough to stay there. So we have an entire cultural preposition that the default answer is no, you're not good enough, and your task is to prove that you're good enough. So a to-do list is a microcosm of that. It's a microcosm of, if I do these things on this list by the end of the day, I am valid, I am lovable, I am good, I am whatever. And that's the kind of way of thinking that a to-do list fosters. And so I don't have a to-do list. I have a list of things I would love to get done. I would love them to get done. And like, sometimes I don't write them down. I'm like, well, if I don't want to do it enough, I won't do it. Like, if it's not that important enough to be in my brain while I'm working. And so my advice here is like, if I was lovable and like, look at your to-do list through the lens of, if I was already like valid and lovable and good at my job, if that was already the case, if I had nothing to prove, what of this would I do? And when would I do it? And you will find things like falling off this list within seconds. The list will go like 1/5 of the length. And you'll be like, well, I'll just do that next Wednesday, because it's all part of this rush to prove like, I'm good at my job, I'm worthy, I deserve to be here, I deserve my salary. And that's an internal like response to our own very natural and human fears of like, what if I'm not good enough? It's like, well, if I am good enough, if I was good at my job and everyone thought I was, what of this list would I do? And you'll cut in half in seconds. We just do so much nonsense.
Oh my God. Do you know, like, I didn't know what I was expecting from us talking today. This is not it. Like, it's so glorious. I think what I kind of, you often think people are come with like very like practical, like you could do this and you could do that, and this is number three. This is so much bigger than that. And actually I'm always a fan of like going to the root of the problem, not kind of like dealing, just putting a band-aid over the top, putting a plaster over the top. And that's what actually I think what I was thinking was actually this kind of like band-aid solution, and what we should be thinking is the root of it. I was like smirking like through that whole thing, just like in that, oh my God, yeah.
Well,
I don't do that. I have a to-do list every single day. That's like part of my routine. And actually I do. And now it's making me aware that you just feel that kind of, there's just that little bit of feeling of failure at the end because you haven't crossed everything off. And we don't need that. We've got enough crap going on.
100%. And we set up these systems, and remember at the end of this, like, generally we work in a corporate, I work for corporate clients, mostly I have private clients as well, but like we're selling stuff, and it's a lot easier to sell stuff, is the honest answer. If everyone feels a little bit crappy, and that thing will get it to you. It's not the only way to sell stuff. It's not the way I sell my services at all, but these systems are really strong. And I'm with you. And when I do workshops, etc., I always get worried that the lack of like tangible things I put in them, but because it doesn't, what we do in the world is completely influenced by how we see it. So if you see threat everywhere, you will respond with fear. If you see safety everywhere, you'll respond with love and creativity and care. And so the actual focus here is on how we see. And my job is to fundamentally change how people see themselves and see the world, to the extent where you completely, another of my morning declarations is, I am a story and I'm holding the pen. I'm just narrative. Sam is a narrative, is a story. Like what social media is a narrative. Your company is a narrative. My company's narrative. So if we shift the story, everything changes. But so my lens is always coming back when people say, I'm struggling with this, I don't feel free, I feel trapped. It's like, well, what story are you telling yourself about what it is you're doing? And all these things. And it's so much deeper. This is the violence in our thinking. You are spending, after you look at your to-do list and you get that pang of like, oh, I didn't do enough today, you'll then start an argument with yourself about, yeah, you did enough, Jenna, well done, you did enough. And then the other voice is like, you didn't though, you were not working hard enough. And so we live in this conflict all the time, like literally all day. And that's what most people are doing. And so this whole practice of way of thinking is like, what if there wasn't a fight? What if I listen to it and it just doesn't affect me and I just do what my heart says? Well, then what would my life be? What would the world be? The answer is generally like a lot better.
And I think I've immediately fallen into that kind of modern world trap. I'm now so conscious of that, like that modern world trap of just wanting like a quick fix to something. Yes. And actually, if I want real change, and if the listeners are feeling like they're trapped in a career, in a role or a position, a company where they feel that kind of like out of control and all these things that we talked about, the best thing they really can do for themselves, what I'm getting from this, is taking that step back and do that work of actually like, what is the end goal for you as a person, and just taking yourself out of that environment for a bit, whether it's in an evening or a weekend, and just going, actually, what do I want from this life? And because we're not just all about work. It isn't all about work. There's a lot more out there. And, I genuinely love my job and I love my work, but it's taken me a really long time to get there and to enjoy it. And I think for me, it's definitely been about breaking down the barriers between like my work life and my personal life. It is all one thing, but in a very healthy way, I think. Because I went on holiday recently, and on the Sunday night, rather than when we got back on the Sunday, going to bed, and rather than feeling like an absolute fear of like waking up the next morning and starting work, I couldn't wait to get into the office. And like, I was just like, oh, this is weird. Like, I've not really kind of experienced this on that level before. And I think that's, with SMU, I found something that I feel so passionately about. And I mean, we're recording this pre-launch, so ask me in a week how I feel might be quite different, but
no, it's going to feel great. And this is the thing, like, people, another aspect of our culture is that we look at what over how. So what job can I do and I'll be happy in? Like and it's this externalization, it's this finding thing. And again, I come from a different way of thinking, which is the how is more important than the what. And this is very similar to the obstacle is the way, the Stoic idea that what is in the way becomes the way. So if I don't know, I'm taking the most like stereotypical business person's problem ever, which is I don't get to spend enough time with my family. If work is an obstacle to that, it's like the obstacle is I don't get to spend enough time with my family or my business will die. My answer will always be that the best way to grow your business is spend more time with your family. Because the thing you truly want, the thing your heart desires, the more of it you get, just the better you will be, the more effective, the more creative, like all of these things. And so if my thing, again, is like living joyfully, or another one of mine is like, I'm a champion for everyone. I can be like, oh, well, I haven't got enough clients, so I can't champion everyone. Or I can go to the supermarket and just champion everyone there. And like go to the till and be like, how's your life? How are you doing? Do you need like, it's the way that the how is so important. And so if you're sat there and you're like, oh, I'm not sure I want to do social media anymore, the honest answer I can give you, the more like joy and love you can find in your job right now, you will just find the what that you really want. People are like, the grass is always greener, I'll go there and then I'll find it. It's like, no. What we need to learn and foster is how we find joy and love and satisfaction wherever we are. It's like the what you'll just find it. Like if you're enjoying your life, you will find what you love doing. And so like spin it round before, like, and it's not to say don't leave. It's like find everything you can to love in where you currently are, and then use that like a slingshot to find the thing you want to do. It's just the other way around. It's not external. It's not over there. It's not a pot of gold. Honestly, there is no more love available in your life than there is right now. There is no more joy available in your life than there is right now. There's no more satisfaction available in your job and life than there is right now. And so like seize it. You're the only thing in the way. Like seize that, and then the what will just come.
Oh man. Okay, so I've got a few things to work on after this, that's for sure. But definitely like feeling that progression, and thank you so much for that advice. And your thoughts, that they're just so fascinating, and so fascinating. I feel like we could talk about it all day, so we'll definitely have to invite you to come back on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I feel like maybe the listeners feel like I've been they've just been like listening into my own like kind of therapy session. So perhaps that's a weird way to do a podcast. Okay, so the last question that I have for you, and again, it's the one that we ask everyone. What's your favorite account to follow on social media, and why?
So, not being that capable or in social media, there's a guy called Rob Mayhew, who I think is on TikTok, but I get him on LinkedIn, who does little short videos about agency life. And this guy absolutely slays me. He does, like, it's the only thing, because advertising and agency life is so niche. There's not that many, like, but he does things about like when you turn up to like another agency's office, or what it's like on pitch night, or what it's like when you, one of my favorites was what it's like when you put on a banging song, but it's got too long an intro on the agency like speaker. Anyway, it's these little gems. Rob Mayhew, I think he's on TikTok, but he's got a LinkedIn thing. I just think he's so funny. So he's my favorite.
I absolutely love him, and this is actually the third time I've had a conversation about him this week. He just seems to, like any of us that have had agency life, like he just hits the nail on the head, like so much. He really does. And actually, one of the conversations I was having this week was, is there a way that I can get like a panel together of people like him and work in social, they said, and all these people kind of like parody our careers and life and kind of talk to them about their own careers and all that kind of, like something that's probably slightly more interesting than what I've made it out to be. But yeah, like it would just be so cool to have all those people on a panel and just like discuss it with them. It's just so much fun.
And he's done the thing we talked about, which is he's proved beyond doubt that we take it too seriously.
Yeah,
like
without a shadow of a doubt.
Like I say this as an ex-agents person, the jobs we do are ludicrous, and that's the joy of it. And somehow we've made that like a pain. Like the more stupid agency jobs are, and social media jobs are, and advertising jobs are, and PR jobs are, the better. They're meant to be stupid. It's ridiculous what you get to do. And like when we
Yeah.
first started working, like the things we
I
used to do,
say
and like
this,
house stuff.
oh my God, like honestly, the stuff I've done over the years, and I just think, I cannot believe this is my job. Like when we're coming up with just all sorts of things, and I just think this is ludicrous, like in the best possible way, but like agonizing over like a reel or something like that with like a piece of content or like one word in a copy, like, and also just like the tasks that you're asked to do like over the years. Okay, so the last thing I need from you is just to kind of say where people can find you on social, website. Just feel free to kind of plug anything you like. This is your time to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn. I don't know what the link is, but if you search for my name, it'll appear. And then my website's trainofthoughtpd.com, and my email is sam@trainofthoughtpd.com. Wherever you're from, like if you're interested in any of this, just drop me an email. The work I do is I do one-to-one work with clients, and I do workshops and I do talks as well. But it really is like, now is the time to change what work is, and now is the time for you to find what you truly like heartfelt want in your work, because the more joy you find in your work, the more we can spread that around. That's an awesome thing.
And if anyone feels like they want to discuss what they've heard Sam talk about today, then head over to the Discord forum, the SMU forum, and we can kind of throw some ideas around about kind of what that means. And if you have any thoughts about how you think you might be able to change your work life, if you want to discuss them in a private environment, then Discord is 100% there for you on that. And taking care of you. So just a final thank you, Sam. So grateful for you agreeing to come on board. And yeah, we'll look forward to having you on again in the future.
Thanks so much, Jenna. Good luck, everyone.